I mentioned in the previous presentation that we would start out part 2 talking about preparation and communication. And so we're going to discuss a little bit about that. That is invaluable when you are planning any type of event, especially as it relates to the safety and security of your facility. And there are several ways that it can be more effective: training, building relationships, and then communicating expectations and challenges. When it comes to training, making sure that the staff that are assigned to specific locations are trained properly, making sure that if there are any issues, that those are handled in the training setting so that staff are prepared to be effective during an event. The worst thing you can do is try to figure out how to do something during the event when it could have been avoided and you could have trained ahead of time. Obviously, every event has surprises that you're going to come into contact with, but we do try to avoid as many surprises as possible. And by having staff that is effectively trained and knows the expectations for their role, that helps ensure that the building is safer and that things go according to plan and people know what needs to happen to make an event successful. Another way to do that is building good, strong relationships. We have a wonderful relationship with the Texas Tech PD and the Fire Marshal's office. We work with them quite a lot on all of our events. And if we ever have any questions ahead of time, we ask them to be part of solutions to make sure that we're as prepared as possible going into specific events. And so building those relationships, not only with the safety and security providers in your area, but also with the tenants in our arena, making sure we have a good working relationship with our teams, a good working relationship with athletics and with our staffing company. Having good relationships with all of those partners helps make sure that we're running successful events and that everyone understands what we're trying to accomplish and that we can all work as a team to accomplish a successful end goal. And then finally, communicating expectations and challenges. Going into any type of event, we do have meetings with several different key stakeholders, our EMS and fire marshal and the police and our in-house teams, to communicate what we're expecting for those events and then what challenges we might encounter. For example, we had Metallica a couple years ago, and the day that they played, both of our men's team and our women's basketball teams were coming back from out-of-town games. And they were supposed to arrive after we had already opened doors for the show and after we had people in the facility for the show. And so we took quite a while. I worked really closely with both teams to ensure that they could get onto campus, that they were able to get to the parking lot to drop off their bags and their equipment. The players were able to get to their cars and that they were able to get to their locker room. And that took a lot of communicating on both sides, communicating with the teams and then communicating with the tour so that everyone was on the same page and understood that we were all working towards the same goal. We just wanted to make sure that certain things happened a certain way so that everyone was as pleased as possible. And so that was something that we worked really hard to make sure it was effective. And then obviously if there are any challenges, sometimes during events, if things don't go according to plan or if there are different issues that come up during an event, we may visit and do a post-event meeting just to see how we can make things better. For example, if we have long lines and we notice that there was a person who was having the safety and security check in a different area than we requested, we may meet with our security provider later and see how we can make that more effective, just so that everybody's on the same page. This is a good example of training in action and expectations. You may just see that it is Pitbull who is performing and he's on the stage, which is exactly where he should be. But if you look in the front of the picture, you will see we have one of our security members. He is looking at the crowd. He's facing out, not towards the stage, which is something that we do expect when any of our security staff are working, and that's usually expected by the tour as well. And so this is a really great picture showcasing that training and those expectations are being met. And so I wanted to share that today so you guys could see that in action. This is a picture of George Strait, and he was in the round, so he was in the middle of the arena. I wanted to share this for two reasons. One, if you look at the top of the picture, you can see the tiny red boxes. Those are the emergency exit signs. They are all active, they're working. That shows another aspect of planning. We review, obviously, all of our emergency exits, make sure that they are working in working order, they're functioning. And so that shows that aspect is being taken care of. This show had pipe and drape. And basically what it would do is it would cover up the entrances to make it darker in the bowl. Once again, you see at the top of the picture, there are some doorways that are illuminated because that pipe and drape hadn't been closed as it should have been. But that does showcase that in addition to our emergency exit signs, that the emergency lighting system was working as well, because we do have egress lights that stay on at all times. And so that's another area that you can see that planning and preparedness being effective and ready. And then in the foreground of the picture, in the front of the picture, you probably see people holding their cell phones. Believe it or not, that is another training issue. We do have different needs that tours are requesting from a safety and security standpoint. And this one, they did allow cameras to be used and phones to be used. And so with being able to see those phones, obviously that shows that our staff was doing what they were supposed to be doing. It is okay that those phones are illuminated and that people are using them. So just another small example of how that training is effective. I can also see by looking at this picture that several of our aisles are clear. Especially in the back half of the picture, you can see those aisles for each seating section are clear. For our country shows, people tend to want to dance in the aisles sometimes. And so there does look like a little bit of movement in one of the aisles showing people maybe walking up the steps, but for the most part, they are clear aisles. And that also means that people are doing what they've been trained to do and they are prepared for this specific event, which is really great from our standpoint. This is an example of some of the different passes you'll see from a security standpoint during an event. We have our own in-house pass, which is the bottom left-hand corner with my picture. And that is one that we will use for all of our athletic events and our other events that are going on. If it's a concert, however, the credential is issued by the tour. And those are some other examples that you see in this specific slide. Each of these credentials, we have to submit a list to the tour, to their head of security ahead of time, with each person's name and their position within the facility, and then we are issued passes that our staff have to wear during the time that they're in our facility. And so that gives you just another layer and another example of how we are making sure that the staff are properly credentialed. And then we do have safety and security staff members posted at all the major ingress and egress points, especially around the dressing room areas and on restricted levels. And so those staff members are familiar with which credentials can and cannot go in specific areas. And they will keep an eye out for the credentials that should or should not be there. And if there are any issues, then they usually contact me and I'll have conversations with head of security and see what we need to do. I wanted to talk through a few examples of when we have really had to plan ahead. We always plan ahead, but in a different way. One of the examples is when Garth Brooks was here in 2017. He had 5 shows with us, and two of those shows were on one day. It was a Saturday. We had a double show day. And all the shows were sold out, obviously. And so a lot of planning and preparation went into making sure that we were ready to go for these shows. From a cleaning standpoint, after the first show was over, they expected us really to have the building turned over in 45 minutes. And when you're talking about upwards of 13 to 14,000 people leaving the building, being turned over in 45 minutes is incredibly challenging. And so we planned ahead of time. We wanted to make sure that all spills are cleaned up, any tripping hazards were cleaned up to make sure that it was safe for people to come back in. We had egress and ingress plans, which I'll go over in just a minute. We worked very closely with traffic and parking as well as the police to make sure that they were stationed in areas that were most appropriate and that they moved depending on what was going on when we were taking people out and bringing the new group back in for that second show. Our staffing and security was very important, and I'll explain to you kind of how we changed some of that in the next slide. Ticketing, we actually did all scanned tickets for this one. This was the first time we scanned tickets for a non-athletic event. And one of the ways that we were able to keep things secure was that the ticketing was disabled for show one for the second show. So if someone came in with a ticket for the first show, they would not be able to get in for the second show. So that helped us make sure that only the right people were in for each individual show. And then we had Cirque du Soleil about a month before Garth, and they did 7 shows with us. And they were on a smaller scale. They had about 1,200 people per show. And so we practiced our plan on those shows to make sure we'd be ready for a larger crowd, which was really invaluable to helping us learn some lessons to be more effective. This shows our ingress and egress plan for the second show. Most of the parking is located to the west of the arena, and that is the area that you see the red circles denying access. We did not want to allow people to start lining up for the second show on the west side because then they would essentially be going out into the parking lots and into the streets to make those lines, and it wouldn't allow the people that were in the building to leave and get in their cars and drive away. So what we did is we had people line up on the east side. There were 2 individual sidewalks, which you see with the blue arrows, where people could line up ahead of time. We knew from talking to previous buildings that the Garth fans did show up early to get in line, and so we wanted to be prepared for that. And so what we did is we shut down that west side towards the end of the show. Everyone started lining up on the east side, and we actually worked with transportation and parking and the police, and we parked people for the first show in the lots a little bit further out from the arena so that the lots closer to the arena were available for people coming in for the second show so that we could get the traffic on and off of campus efficiently. You'll see that we made 1 staircase at each of our 4 corners, an egress staircase, and then we doubled up and allowed essentially 4 lines for people to line up into the building for the second show. We doubled up on our staff on the east side versus the west side to allow people to get in line and get in as efficiently as possible. For the second show on Saturday, they did have a VIP group. It was only a group of about 10, so we made one of our west side entrances a VIP entrance. The rest were egress, and then we made our second set of doors on that west side a will call only to help facilitate all the will call orders. And then finally, you'll see that we have a picture of basketball here, one of our basketball games. Another plan that we work at revising and revisiting each season is our court rushing plan. We want to make sure that our students and athletes and everyone involved is as safe as possible if there is a court rushing. And so you'll notice that on the end of the bench or the end of the court where it says Red Raiders, that is typically where we will stage our staff because that is located by the student seating, and we help funnel students onto the floor in that way so that we are protecting the team benches, and we're hopefully making it as efficient as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm glad that I was able to talk a little bit about this. Thank you so much.